Hi, this is a new episode of the Marketing Meeting, and my guest today is Felix Oberholzer-Gee. First and foremost, he is the co-host of my favorite podcast, After Hours, and the
Oh,
author of my favorite strategy book, Better, Simpler Strategy. Last but not least, although you said that I don't need to mention that, he's the professor of business administration at Harvard University. Welcome, Felix.
thank you for having me, Tia. I'm excited to be here.
So, one of my dreams is to be such a good speaker that one day I either speak at the TED Global event or join you and me here at one of the episodes of After Hours.
Oh, I
So,
see. Those are two
uh,
very different ambitions, I'll say.
well, for me, like close. But I mean, since you are now a guest on my podcast, does that mean that I'm 1% closer to achieving one of my dreams?
Yes, absolutely. There's always progress every day, as you know.
Yeah, and maybe I'll just invite me here too, so it's another 2%.
That's right.
And then
That's right.
if I can get young me, it's probably like 10% closer.
Yes.
So I'm really happy to have you at the show. So today I'd like to get your quick thoughts on a very big topic. Actually, this is the most important topic probably of the year. And guess what? It's AI. Um, I'm
Surprise, surprise.
surprise, surprise. Yeah. So, Felix, I'm in marketing, and in marketing, there is a tendency to talk about AI within the context of, copywriting, creatives, ads, which
Mm,
is actually a smaller context. And then, just like everything, it starts all with the business and how we build the business strategy, and then integrate AI into that strategy. And then we build the marketing plan, marketing strategy, and then we talk about, okay, how do we integrate copywriting, ads, creatives, and so on. So a few weeks ago, the reason that I approached you actually is few weeks ago, I was having a chat with a very young consultant. He's just out of the college. He's working at a very big consultancy firm, and they are working on again, a big global brand project. And he says that he's preparing most of his slides through the help of AI.
mhm,
So yeah,
mhm.
think about it's like a big business consultancy firm in a big business strategy project, and the person is just preparing the slides in helping with getting the help of AI. So as a professor of business strategy and working on this field for so many years, how will AI shift the way we do business and the way we build strategy?
Yeah, yeah, that's a super, super interesting question and a lively debate, as you know, because no one is too sure what the consequences will be. So, I think there's two things that I find helpful to always keep in mind. In the end, any sort of artificial intelligence is about predictions, right? So even the large language models that we have right now that have garnered so much interest in the end, they're about predicting what's the next word, what's the next slide, what's the next content that you will produce. So that I think is important to keep in mind. And then generative AI in particular, I think of as mostly a process innovation. And of course, we've had other really big process innovations in the past. I think Henry Ford is probably the poster child that everybody thinks of. There's just-in-time production, there's lean startup, and so on and so on. So we're not really doing anything novel. We're not really doing
Mhm.
anything, much better than we used to. We just have a different way of accomplishing similar tasks than in the past. And I think that's important to recognize because then from business to business, the answer is, do you want those slides to look very similar to every other slide that every other consultant has produced? Or do you want these slides to be really novel, to be really different? And if AI is used to maybe give you a first draft, and then you can innovate around that draft. And then it might be a process improvement that has amazing effects on productivity. If you want something that you have done many times before and you want a slight variation on what you have done in the past, then AI might actually replace to some degree human involvement in the first place. So it all has to do with uh, how do you use this technology to ultimately affect the productivity with which you do things that are not entirely different from the past, with which you do things that are common, are well known, are well understood. And the key aspect here is to think about how much more productive will we be. And the reason that
Mhm.
this is such an important question is that in the past, we've had great difficulty tracing productivity from emerging technologies through to the economy. It was true for the early days of computing when, the way we worked, the way processes were organized in the organization, they changed dramatically. Oh my God, like my day at work was very, very different. Could we see anything in productivity data for the economy as a whole? No, we couldn't. I
Mhm.
don't know if you remember, but when we first got email, we were so excited about email. It's like, oh my God, email is going to be really amazing. And I can reach out to so many people. I can, have mini groups with which I can converse. And then, now when you ask people, like, how much more productive are you as a result of email? You get very mixed responses where a good number of people will say, it's basically eating my day. And I will be
Mhm.
much more productive. I will be much happier if I had less of it. And I think that's the really big question regarding AI. Like, it's a process innovation that has the potential to make us more productive.
Mhm.
And productivity is really important for some jobs, is important for the economy as a whole. It's probably not a good description of what we have first and foremost in mind when we think about innovation and doing things
Mhm.
that are very novel, very different from what we've done in the past. But for any sort of routine activity inside the organization, productivity is essentially what makes you more successful. And the conversation really needs to be, are there ways for us to use AI so that we don't end up in the email dilemma that we all experience?
Yeah, very good approach. Uh, I'm just like contemplating about the implications to the business because at the moment when I type anything to, well, I'm talking about the context of ChatGPT or Bart,
Mhm.
when I write, because after talking to that consultant, I did the same thing. I was on a business, not marketing strategy project, brand strategy project. And I said, okay, it was a very unique and new industry for me. And I said, okay, let me try to write it down. Okay, and I said, okay, I gave the brief to Bart, and then I expect some kind of answer. And the strategy, brand strategy, and marketing strategy, it built for me was very wide. So it was asking, okay, do the media planning, do the influencer marketing, write white papers. It was very generic at the end of the day. So it was giving me like 10 options. Maybe I was like, oh, okay, I didn't consider that. Maybe I should think about it. But it was giving me 10 options, which at the end I just added one more to the presentation that I have.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I think in that sense it's good to have like um, idea or like exploration of ideas and getting help from AI. But at the end of the day, I think it depends on how we think about strategy, because strategy is something like, even in wars there's a strategy. And then if it's something that can be taught to people in a very easy way, then AI should be able to do that, right?
Yeah, so I think the interesting question is, strategy ultimately lives off differences, right? So that's true for business strategy writ large, and then it's true for all the derivatives. What's your marketing strategy? What's your marketing plan, and so on and so on. And so the question is, what will happen if you ask any sort of AI product, provide me a strategy for my company that is truly differentiated from what everybody else is doing? Because if
Mm-hmm.
it's very similar to what everybody else is doing, then of course customers will just pay a lot of attention on price. And, if it's something for employee branding, they will pay a lot of attention to how much you get paid. So you want those differences. And the way I think about AI often is, remember that step in ideation, when we're in a
Mm-hmm.
phase where we just throw out tons of ideas and we don't really talk about, are these ideas any good? Are they really useful? And the purpose of that is not so much that we think there's going to be one idea that is just perfect. It's not like a lottery where there's a winning lotto ticket, and that ticket is the right one. The purpose of throwing out lots and lots of ideas is that I hear your idea and I'm inspired by it and I'm thinking of something else. And then you see what I thought of and you're maybe inspired by what I thought of. And so it's sort of building on each other's ideas to ultimately see something that is really different, something that no one has ever thought before,
Mm-hmm.
a way to create combinations that didn't exist. And often, at least the way AI products, my experience is they're actually relatively good at spitting out ideas, but nothing ever strikes me as truly innovative, as truly novel. Oh my God, I never thought of XYZ. But that's not to say, I think it would be too early then to jump to the conclusion that, oh, AI cannot really be truly innovative. As a result, we don't have to pay attention to it. No, the role of AI might be to sort of give you a broad overview of everything that is out there. And
Mm-hmm.
then you can take that as a starting point for inspiration and ideation that really leads you to something that is truly different, that is truly novel, and in that sense, strategically valuable. So my own sense is what AI will mostly do, it will change the division of labor between what we as people do best and what the machine can do really, really well. I give you a practical example. I have a friend who works in a large newsroom, and she's writing a column for the publication. And the column it's often funny. Like humor is a bit, there are substantive points, but it's also the way it's written. The humor is really important.
Mm-hmm.
And so essentially what she does now is she gets the first version from ChatGPT. And then her experience, I don't know if it's about her brand or her type of humor, but her experience is, wow, boy, it's really like, even if I ask it, like, what's a more humorful version of my column? Uh, it's terrible. I mean, it's just not right. Like sometimes it's cringeworthy, sometimes it goes too far, sometimes it doesn't go far enough. And I think all that says is somehow in that column writing process, the line between what the machine can do and what she can really do that maybe no one else can, or maybe only humans can, that is now shifted to the adding humor part is really hard. And maybe, who knows, maybe AI will learn about that part as she uses it more often. But right now, her job has changed.
Mm-hmm.
But also adding the humor bits and pieces in that's a time consuming process. So
Yeah.
if I ask her overall, like by how much has time fallen now? How long does it take you to write a column? At least at this point in time, her answer is not that much. And so
Mm-hmm.
that means for productivity purposes, AI hasn't actually, it's changed how we work, but it
Mm-hmm.
hasn't actually made us more productive.
Yeah, I think in that sense, your example from giving an answer about email, which has been like one of the biggest changes in our lives, like 2 decades ago, probably, or like three
Yes.
decades ago. I kind of lost sense of the time. But I mean, is it really helping our efficiency or not? I think that's something that we are going to see and explore within the next few years. And
Yes.
with,
Yeah.
well, I mean, to wrap up with, I mean, I always think this when people talk about AI technologies, it's not only AI, it's any type of technology that is coming to our life, and people think that okay, oh, it's going to change our life, or is this a
Hmm.
threat, or is it like a complementary thing that will help us win, or that's the Homo sapiens, right? I mean,
Yeah.
in within
Yes.
its scope, and I'm just like contemplating, okay. happiness is some kind of a topic that the human beings have been thinking about for so many years. And then still we couldn't figure out what will make us happy. Okay, what's the rule of happiness? What's the solution formula of happiness?
Yeah.
And while we are contemplating that, and can we really look out and say, okay, AI will change how we live and we're gonna take our jobs and then we're gonna this is,
Yes.
I always make this connection in my mind. We haven't solved the solution of and the formula of happiness, which has been in our agenda for so many years. Then I mean, what will AI do in the coming years that will help us solve bigger problems in
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
lives?
Those are fabulous questions. I think one thing, it will change our lives for sure.
Yeah.
But not every change in our lives is a change in productivity. And ultimately, when you think about process improvements, process innovations, the type that AI belongs to, um, they only confer competitive advantage if they affect productivity. So it might be that
Mm-hmm.
my job and your job looks entirely different 4 or 5 years from now because of all the advances in technology. And it might be that you and I have become no more productive than we are today. That's completely consistent. And I think that's what often gets mixed up. Will it
Mm-hmm.
change our lives? Yes, absolutely. It's very hard for me to see how that's not going to happen. But will the change in our lives go hand in hand with changes in productivity? That I think is a much more complicated question where we have examples of where people say, oh my God, it takes me half the time to accomplish a particular task. And then, you worry a little bit about what's that going to look like if everybody uses that technology? Is it still the case? So say, like to take a simple example, in law firms where you need to study a lot of prior court decisions and incredible amounts of documents in the discovery process.
Mm-hmm.
And is it reasonable to believe that productivity of lawyers in that process will dramatically increase? Oh, yes, I would be so surprised if that wasn't true. And then for other kinds of activities, I think it's probably a little less open, and probably a little more open whether that's going to happen or not. And what's always critical, I think, in particular from the strategist's point of view, is if you make progress and everybody
Mm-hmm.
else makes the same progress, we're back to square one. You have
Mm-hmm.
not gained a competitive advantage at all. And so just relying on, oh, technology makes things better, that means competitive advantage. No, that's completely naive because every other law firm will also use AI to do discovery. And so, yes, you're all more productive, but in some sense, the competitive game hasn't really changed in any meaningful way. And then this confusion around changes in life and changes in productivity. Those are probably the two big things that I would encourage everyone to think about where we're headed. And it's particularly interesting because we truly don't know.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. And I hope that I'm going to make this as serious as I start with the business strategy. And then before jumping into talking about the effects of AI in copywriting, in ads, in, advertising, I'll just start with the business strategy with you and to kick off the series of AI, marketing in the age of AI.
That's wonderful. I can't wait to listen to everything.
Thanks a lot for joining me.
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure to be here, Yatir.